Good evening, everyone. Happy September 16th to all. I'm Karren here with Karen's Carrots. And once again, I just keep finding wonderful, inspiring, brilliant guests to join you to as you join me, I should say, on Karen's Carrots. So yes, Thursday at 7, Karen's Carrots is here. EA's in the C-suite is what I go by. EA's in the C-suite, strengthening their emotional intelligence so that they become business partners, strategic business partners to their CEOs. And tonight we have a very interesting guest, I must say. Um, you're going to enjoy the information. You're going to enjoy her. She's just wonderful. Her name is Donna Liggon. Did I pronounce that right, Donna?
It's Liggon.
Liggon.
Yes.
No problem. Senior Change Management Consultant. So, Donna, a powerhouse senior change management and organizational development professional. She's been using her consultative skills as a change management consultant with various government entities and global corporations in a variety of industries. She's a native Philadelphian. She also holds paralegal certification from the Philadelphia Institute for Paralegal Training, while also holding a BA from the University of Pittsburgh and an MA from Columbia University. And as you'll see, she's an excellent communicator and motivator with strong business acumen and professionalism. Welcome, Ms. Donna. I am so glad to have you
Thank
here
you.
this evening. And as I say, you are a powerhouse and you come loaded. And I just stopped at the very top because there's so many more accolades and honors that you've received and achieved. But
Thank
I'll
you.
let you go on and give a little bit more about yourself to our audience.
Sure. So, as Karen has mentioned, I'm a senior change management consultant. I've actually been in this industry for almost over 25 years now. Hard to believe considering, I'm only 20. But anyway, so, but it has been very rewarding for me. I kind of started this journey when I was very young. I had an interest in this type of work, believe it or not, and it was kind of very minimum, but I started the journey when I was 12, having an interest in it. It came with industrial psychology. I thought industrial psychologists did interesting jobs because industrial psychologists get into sometimes the workplace in terms of color in the workplace, where you sit actually motivates how you do your job or if you're going to be able to be productive. And I was like, hey, that's, really interesting. So I held on to that ever since I was 12. And I had some other interests, such as I thought about going into legal. I wanted to be an attorney. So ultimately, I wound up being a paralegal, which that was very rewarding to me as well. Spent about 15 years in that field. But I didn't want to be, a person that talked about my other passion and just never pursued my other passion. So I changed my career kind of midpoint of my, professional journey and just went towards the psych side, the industrial psych side. And later on in the years, they changed it to organizational psychology because what happens is industrial psych kind of was born in car plants, actually. Volkswagen was one of the first ones to really apply some of these industrial psychology skills where they believe workers were more successful if they worked on the entire car as opposed to they used to just work on parts of the car where the outside people will work on the outside car, part of the car, and then they had the people who worked only in the interior, but then they did things like job rotations and things like that where people had a buy-in to the whole. So that's kind of where, my interests grew and I just kept kind of going to that, field because I thought it was really interesting. And plus I'm a people person. I really like people. I enjoy people being successful, whether it's in the workplace or whether it's just in life in general. And obviously, culture, the environment, how we go to work, how we work, and it all is all connected. So
You made an interesting example talking about Volkswagen and how, some folks had the assignment of the exterior versus the interior.
mhm.
Give me an example of an industry with services where the people are involved. I mean, not necessarily a product, and that dynamic of change agent.
Lots of companies that provide services. They're, law firms. There are accounting firms, and I use them because a lot of times they don't really believe they need change management. Um, but of course, they're the type of places that really need change management, and they're great to go into because there's lots of work to be done there. Things change for them all the time, and they don't realize how much the impact of change happens to not just to their clients, but also to themselves as well. How they relate, things that they're using in the workplace in terms of IT products. Some of the IT products um, efficiently make them able to service their clients a little more efficiently. Whereas, law firms and also accounting firms, they're so antiquated. They're used to using this paper and, lots and lots of paper. But of course, through automation, they're better off with servicing their clients. So change management at its best in those kind of places.
How challenging is that, though? As you said, I imagine a lot of pushback because
Oh,
certainly
yes.
they feel that what they're doing is just fine and
Yeah,
right. Thank you.
absolutely. Lots of pushback. And pushback that they don't realize that they're applying. They're thinking that, well, this is the way we've always done it. This has always worked for our clients. However, as we know, our clients are changing. A lot of our clients are used to technology. So, you have some of the seasoned attorneys and accountants that have to kind of, take it up a notch and step up to the plate and realize, this is the best way to service your clients because this is what they want. This is what they're asking for. So um, it's not always easy, but it's good to be able to show them evidentially that this works better for them when they change.
I think this is an excellent scenario for what it is that I do. Foster emotional intelligence and strengthening the emotional intelligence. So the fact that you have the skill as motivator and an excellent communicator, I mean, I'm sure that comes in mightily, if I can't find another word. And I think that's interesting because you have the dynamic of those who feel they don't have power and may be very high in the technology area, and then you have the partners, or as I call them, those in the C-suite.
Yes, 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 yes. Um, well, that's true. Those that sit in the C-suite. But if you, as a professional, as a change management professional, I found that if you can come in with some kind of evidence, show that adoption levels are, at a certain level, if people make these transitions. Also, one thing when talking to people in the C-suite is being able to show, their rate of return if they go with this in this direction. One thing about change management, it's a lot of people type of thing and kind of fuzzy and warm, but there are actual numbers that support some of the things that we do. And also that shows to the C-suite that, this is successful. And this is something that they can cling on to and show that they are efficiently doing their work and show that they actually have evidential numbers too.
Now, others may not be interested, but I'd be interested in the process, the time, for instance. Okay, so naturally, there's a lot of talking in the beginning because you got to get folks to buy in. Then you have to see how it fits into their timeline and their environment. I suppose in an accounting firm, for instance, you wouldn't want to come with this in tax season because that's just a no go. But the same with the law firm, if they have a what do they call a high profile case, lots of litigation going on, that's wrong timing as well. So Go ahead. How do you address all of that?
So let's just say it's never a good time for change, right? Never. I mean, change is inevitable. It's just never a good time. And obviously, there's always stuff that's going on. So sometimes in organizations, it's not so much me as a professional driving the change. It's because the entity has decided they needed to change. So they've already embarked upon the journey. So they have decided, put in scope in their statement of work that, hey, we want to make this change. It could be a people change. It could be a process change, or it could be an IT change. And really, even if it's an IT change, that's really fostering the change. But we all know that affects the people.
Absolutely.
And it also affects the process. So it's never a great time, but obviously the approach is, okay, what is the change? What is your timeline for this change? Because people have their own thoughts. They were like, well, we want to make this change by December. Okay, well, it's September right now. We're not going to do that by December. It's not going to happen. So, we set out real goals and really look at, maybe it's going to take us a year. It may take us 6 months, depending on what it is. And it could take longer, depending on what's on the agenda. Me as a professional, I'm here to be at your service to help you make this journey, but we're going to make a realistic journey. So, sitting down, looking at the actual timeline, what are your must-haves? What are your, really need to have? And what are nice to haves? Like you say, hey, we would like to do this, but if you, in a short window, you can't do everything.
That's interesting. In 25 years in various capacities that you've been involved in this arena, what's one of the biggest changes you've seen that has taken place or is taking place, or has there been a complete turn in how things are done in the scope of change management?
So I guess one of the biggest changes I've seen is, when a company decides to make a personnel change. And when they do a personnel change on a global level, it can be very, very, sticky because of the fact there are laws that govern how U.S. workers work, how workers work in the U.K. So there's a lot of things that you can and cannot do. So I would say that's one of the biggest changes I found to be challenging. And then also I would say the environment we're in today. I think a lot of people are not really conscious of what's going on. They're aware, but not really conscious. Yeah, and I say that because I think people are still trying to do things the same way, but you can't do things in the same way. Things are different today. For instance, something that I'm experiencing now is trying to relationship build in a remote environment. Whereas if I was in an office and I'm trying to do some sort of change methodology, I would have the ability to come into your workspace, to sit into your office, and maybe I could take a day and just talk to you, or over a couple of days. Whereas now I have to schedule meetings to kind of quietly introduce myself. Now I have to make my email sound great enough that you really want to talk to me. Now maybe it's like, okay, well, I'm going to set up a meeting, and then you feel like, well, this person doesn't know who I am. Do they want to put time on their calendar to really meet me? They have none of these things about my great personality. If I was in an office, I could come in and say, hey, I'm Donna, I'm here to help you. But now it's totally different. And I find you spend lots of time building relationships and having to keep building them as if it was the first time. Whereas, if we were in an office, we wouldn't have to do that.
Because you lose that connection in between Zoom calls.
Correct. Yeah. And, you have to, the conversations you would have in the hallway are not there anymore. I don't see you walking past and say, hi, Karren, maybe we could grab lunch. Oh, you're going to the water fountain, or, hey, you want to get something downstairs, a cold beverage or a warm beverage. We don't have that anymore. So now you have to kind of reach out to people, maybe then you feel a little strange. Do you reach out to these people weekly? Do you and then how does this person feel that you're constantly emailing them, and then always inviting them to a meeting? It's like, I don't want to meet with you like that. So it's a different way. It's a totally different way of working, and I don't think everyone has latched onto it yet because it's still new, and I don't think everyone is comfortable because now it's a difference in the comfort zone level. People who don't have all those great people skills per se. Now this makes you have to reach out a little more and kind of go forward a little more than what you may not have been able to do or not capable of doing before or afraid to do.
So, in that regard, are the changes that you are coming in contact with different? And not in terms of relationships, but let's say we wanted to move from downtown center city to an office park, and now that we're in an office park, there's going to be a lot of different changes. So what your services, the services that are being requested of you now, are they very different because we are living in different times?
So I wouldn't say that as much, but one thing I can say is that I'm finding more remote workers as opposed to, if I come on site, these people would be in the office. So now, you ask about, let's say, the call center. The call center will be sitting in the office. So now the call center is all remote. So how do you reach that call center to give them the information that they need? Do they have a chance to come into the office? Perhaps they may not be able to come into the office. So it's a lot of this whole thing of Zooming, Teams, and then also you're dealing with a workforce that maybe is not used to using this technology. So you have to be sensitive to that as well.
Yes.
Lots of us use these things all the time. Now you're asking people who have never used these type of tools to just all of a sudden become, IT gurus, and people are not.
Yes.
Trying to use a camera. Some people, we all learn differently. Some people not feeling comfortable. Some people being distracted depending on their environments at home. We assume everyone has a great setup, but everyone does not have a great setup. And then we also assume everyone has the latest piece of technology, and that's not always the case. And here's the other thing. We also assume something, that people have good internet, but some people do not. And it's, some people have never bothered to upgrade their internet, don't really care about their internet because of where they live, because they may live somewhere out remotely. And they're like, hey, this is my sanctuary. I use the computer at work, but now we're asking them to use the computer at home, and it's not the same thing. So
yeah, that's a good point. I just talked to someone tonight. Actually, they work at Amtrak, and Amtrak has begun allowing more people to work from home.
Right.
And they didn't have internet at home. And
Right.
in fact, they had problems with the wiring, and they just forgot about it. Well,
Right.
now that they're saying, certain people may be able to work at home, they had to get everything done to be ready just in case. Comcast had to come in and rewire and all of that. So, that's those are things we really don't think of. You just named a whole slew of things. Just because now we're here, you have to work at home. Oh, I don't have internet. Oh, I only have my phone, and all of the jobs don't supply equipment to take home.
No, and it becomes a challenge. And I mean, it makes people, excuse me, feels a little anxious about, how they connect, and they can't connect, and they're, kind of like have all these anxieties because now you're changing their home environment, may come with additional costs. There's a lot of things that are happening that I don't think are being addressed.
Yes.
And, it's a part of a change.
I was thinking of that, not only that psychological change, and the change that, may cause economic impact on a household. There's also people afraid to go in the workplace because of the various protocols that may or may not have been instituted
Correct.
Do you encounter that? In fact, does any of your change involve the protocols that should be set up in an office in light of COVID?
So I haven't gotten involved with the changes on that regard, but obviously, recently I had to go into an office setting, and there was conversations around how many people you could have in a room.
Mm,
Personnel. The company decided that they needed to all be vaccinated and able to not wear a mask. If they were unvaccinated, they had to always wear a mask. And myself as a visitor or as a contractor, you must come with a mask. They don't really discriminate. I mean, I should say differentiate if you are vaccinated or not. They tell you to wear a mask at all
okay.
times.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I mean, of course, as a consultant and you're going into these workplaces, and of course, even though I'm a change person and, I'm always in my mind, it's like change is good, change is fine. But obviously, I'm human. So, I go in and I'm thinking, oh my God, should I be masked? How many people are going to be around me? But understanding I'm following certain protocols, and I'm making sure that I'm vaccinated and I'm protecting myself and making sure I'm protecting other people, the 6 feet of distance,
Yes.
all those things, keeping those things in mind, and hand washing and sanitizing, all of the things that we've been doing. I feel okay, and I felt okay, and I felt that people were mindful and respectful, and that kept being reiterated. And I could say from a workplace, I felt comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
So, um, let me just ask, what are some tips for managing organizational change?
one of the biggest things I think is a big tip is know your audience. I mean, one thing as a change management professional, we do come with methodologies. There's all kinds of schools of thoughts, all things about approaches, all these kind of things. There's all these frameworks and diagrams and schools of thoughts. At the end of the day, know your audience. Everything does not apply. One thing is, I always say change is inevitable. People are not going to embrace change very well. So, there's always going to be people who are resistant. But, one thing is, never forget your people skills, because the more you can connect with other people, make them feel comfortable. It's not about what's happening. It's not about they're getting something new. They're doing this or doing that. Get to know your audience. Make people feel comfortable with you, be able to trust you. And then, get to understand why they have these hangups. Get to know people. Really get to know people, listen to people, be an active listener. Don't just be a person that's coming in with your agenda and you're like, well, this is what's happening, and by December, you'll be doing this. It's not about that. Because just like any other place, we work a certain way. Just like we do things in our homes, we do things a certain way. People do things at work a certain way. No matter what their tasks are, that's their domain. This is what they do when they get to work, whatever it is, respect that, be mindful of that.
Thinking innovatively, what do you see coming down the pike in your industry?
Well, one thing about change, it's inevitable, as a professional, I live by the fact of the word flexible.
Okay.
Being flexible, understanding that change is getting ready to happen, but what does it look like? One thing, it's going to affect people, but how it's going to affect people. Also, one thing that people have to also take in consideration too is what is going on when the change happens.
Mm,
What is going on inside the organization, what is going on in our environment, whether it's something that's global, whether it's just the environment that people work in. There's lots of cultural changes, and every organization has their own culture within itself.
yes. Yes.
And there's always the culture, there's always the subculture, and then there's that deep culture that nobody talks about. So, I mean, as a professional, you just want to be in tune to all of that. and be flexible because you really don't know what. You know, like we go from being in an institution or organization with four walls. Now the walls are there are no walls anymore. So, we can be outside, we could be inside, we can, we just, it's like a mobile thing, and
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
it's module, 1 minute we're inside, next thing we're outside. So we just have to be open, understand that we all experience change differently, and we don't all embrace it the same way or at the same time. So that's what I would say.
If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
Ooh, if I wasn't doing this, what would I be doing? I think I probably would be tap dancing around the world.
That sounds marvelous.
Yes, that's one of my hobbies. I do tap dance. So
Okay.
I think I would be tap dancing around the world.
Oh, wow. Okay. You know what's funny? I have all boys, and when the oldest two were younger, we lived in New York, and I
Oh,
always did something. I was one of these moms who felt you should always be involved in some activity. It might be tennis, it might be swimming. I was always getting something together, right? They were going to tap dance at summer camp at Lincoln Center.
oh,
Oh no, they weren't. Oh,
no.
I bought the shoes. Both, they're 3 years apart. Both refused to even
Oh, no.
try. So when you said tap, it took me back.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, that's, they tried many things. Tap dance was not one of them. But that's really nice. Do you have someplace that you go and just let it all out?
So I started tapping back in 2006. I didn't tap as a child. I started as an
Okay.
adult. I started at the University of the Arts,
Okay.
but since COVID, I have not been back in a classroom. All of COVID last year, during the summertime up until the fall, I tap danced over Zoom with my classmates, and
Nice.
I haven't tapped recently. Excuse me. But I do plan to, within the next coming week. I saw a class I'm going to sign back up and start tapping
Well, when
again.
you say all over the world, where would you go? You got a place in
So,
mind?
well, yeah, because I had the pleasure of attending the International Tap Festival in Brazil.
Okay.
I've been there twice for tap dance. Back in 2018, my classmates and I went to Sao Paulo, and I got a chance to tap in Carnival in
All
Sao Paulo.
right.
So, I'm inspired now, It's
Okay.
like, so yes.
Bring it on.
Yeah. So I would say Brazil, all those South American countries. Yes.
So as we bring things to a close, and this is the only one time I'm not gonna let you say your favorite.
What's that?
Change is inevitable.
Okay. All right.
So um what what would you share with our audience about changes that they may encounter, and let's say, sometimes there are roadblocks, there are different things. What advice, if you will, can you give to ease that process for any of us? Because the timing could be off. We relocated at one point, we meaning my job, to another city. I was really excited going to Chicago. Man, no, I had never been there, but I was excited about it. And I remember people in the workplace asked me, "You're just gonna go like
Mm,
that?"
mm.
Well, the most important thing at the time was having employment.
Sure.
So my job is relocating.
What's the
I'm cool.
problem?
It's going to be wonderful. But by the same token, that kind of move really upset some people. I mean, to the point they were emotionally ill, with nerves and all, making that kind of move from one city to another where they had no experience, they had no friends, they had no family. And me, I found a family and I'm still with them, so to speak, in Chicago, but that could be pretty traumatic.
Yeah, well, I would say be open. Open, be flexible. You know, change is never easy for any of us. I would say, go into it with an open mind. Find a sweet spot for yourself, whatever it is. Maybe it's something small. You move into a new city. If you're fortunate enough to have a job, that's kind of that first hook that you can hook into. And be open to meeting new people. I know all of us are not friendly like myself, but you know
Or like myself.
right. Everybody's different, and I
That's
get that.
true.
Everybody's personality is not like ours. But I would say baby steps. You can't, as they say, you can't eat an elephant at one time, and that's true. I mean, you have to take
It's
take
one
life.
bite at a time.
Right. Take life in chunks. Go what's comfortable for you. I mean, even if it's something that you say, hey, it's not for you, that's understandable as well. But if you get an opportunity where you have to do something that's a change, I would say just kind of, be flexible and look for the opportunity. As I always tell people, opportunity lies outside the comfort zone. And,
How about
it's true.
that? Well, as you were wrapping up, I thought to myself, you have the right personality to be in that business. And not only the right personality, the background as well, because you understand that people may be, in a situation of great unease, and to speak to them in a way that shows you understand, to be empathetic, that helps the process, even though it's challenging, and nobody's trying to minimize that. But I have to say thank you so much for
No, thank
joining me
you.
this evening. You're quite welcome. It was a joy. And if it's anything that you'd like to add, feel free. Anything you want to say? Any last words?
I would just say, be open to the opportunity, embrace life, enjoy the journey because it's truly a journey, is, a gift. And as I say, opportunity lies outside the comfort zone. It truly does.
And tapping in Brazil, I can't think of anything more exciting than that. Hey, look, if you're not tapping, you're being a spectator. That would be exciting in
Yes,
Brazil,
yes, yes, yes.
Well, once
Absolutely.
again, I thank you, folks. Tonight we had Miss Donna Liggon.
Yes.
Hi, got it.
Yes.
Senior Change Management Consultant. She has been a joy to have on the air tonight on our live, but more importantly, a wealth of information and good advice to part with us in terms of any upcoming changes we may have in employment or otherwise. And I'd like to just remind everybody, rather, of my new journal. It's a 30-day self awareness journal. We're doing pre sales now. It's a guide to boost your emotional intelligence. I put the link here, easinthecsuite.com/shop, and welcome you all to get one. It's really a beneficial tool to have in your arsenal of self development. And with that, I'm going to say thanks again to my guests. And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to say anyone who is not on here now, but will see the live later, just hashtag replay. We'd appreciate that. And that's all for tonight, folks.
Thanks, Karren.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all again, God willing, next Thursday at 7 with Karren's Carrots. Thanks and good night.